Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Hey guys. Super cringe intro. What?
Intro.
What do you mean?
Intro.
Okay. Since we've gotten so much positive feedback from the first two videos, we're going to continue on to chapter 3 of a cold start problem.
No one asked for this, but that's your fault. The cold start theory.
Oh, that was such a cringe joke. So cringe.
The series no one asked for, we're continuing.
I asked.
Would you like the intro? Oh, you asked for?
Yeah, I think it's great. And I think if we I think hopefully this will be like a change in like a hard fork in the videos where we're like really putting good thought into them and not just trolling like the first two.
Too bad. We're
I
still
want it to be
continuing
like
that.
good content.
Too bad, we're still continuing that.
Good content.
Too bad. Okay. So the third chapter is the cold start theory. This is going to be a discussion video, like the second video.
And the first.
Oh, yeah, and the first. So the first question I'm going to be asking is, so the most important thing to understand about the cold start theory is that when a network grows and evolves, the most important thing is to have the understanding of how to take that action and propel it from one stage to another.
Mm-hmm.
And it is shown in 5 points: the cold start problem, the tipping point, escape velocity, hitting the ceiling, and the moat.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all of those, what do you think is the most difficult?
I would probably say the first stage. The first part, I think, is by far the hardest because it's the easiest point to get discouraged. Because I think at many of the other points, like, what's the second one, the tipping point, right?
Yeah.
Like with the tipping point, you actually have a small, albeit small, you have a set of users who are actually sustaining the network on both ends, the easy and the hard end. But actually, I think getting those users in the first place, like making friends, getting people to beta test your software in the beginning, I think that's the hardest part.
What do we do to make it stable in order to progress to the tipping point?
Well, the first part I think is really important is actually getting early projects and early contributors to use the underlying platform. That is by far the hardest part. So getting just a minimum viable network will be the most challenging part, because it's like, well, how do you find these projects and users? Well, I think the YouTube channel is one vector of that strategy. I would say the few others that we're working on implementing, or I'm working on implementing, is finding projects and people who want to get into Web3 in whatever capacity that is, whether it's contributors or founders, to actually use the platform and give us feedback to help mold it into a more useful tool, as well as writing on Substack. I think with those 3 strategies, it's at least a start to try to get the minimum viable network up and running.
Tipping point, the second of the primary stages. What do you believe causes the tipping point? And do you believe it's all self-made, or is it from the easier and simpler to use of the technology you use, that you've implemented in the product, I should say?
What do you mean by that last part?
A simpler product to use.
What, so a more intuitive UI makes a better product?
Well, do you think that can cause a tipping point, or is it just...
Well, I think it's just the repetition of building multiple small networks. So maybe in our case, you start with JPEG NFTs, where you try to onboard, let's say, artists and people who can do the underlying coding of the smart contracts, and then maybe you focus on experimental DeFi next. And then now you have a tipping point of multiple niches, and then you can move on to the next after that, and so forth.
The third stage is the escape velocity. There are three effects: the engagement effect, the acquisition effect, and the economic effect. Out of all of these, what do you believe is the most important?
I would say they come at different stages and they all have their own specific set of important attributes for each stage. Like maybe the acquisition effect is really critical in the beginning, where I think one example is using your early users as a vector to attract more users. And then the economic effect maybe works more well where you can actually put money into, let's say, marketing to attract more users, and so forth.
What do you think is the most important for us?
Out of the three,
Yeah.
let's see, out of economic, acquisition, and engagement. That's a good question. I would say engagement probably, mainly because I think the more we get early users to engage in the product and the more I think the word used is sticky, meaning people use it more, the more we can see how people are maybe using it when the tooling isn't built out for that purpose, and then building out that tooling and really zeroing in on that.
As you get bigger, it's harder to reduce that. What do you think? What do you think people can do, or our company?
That's actually one of the biggest fears I have for the product, that if it just scales up too much, it'll stop becoming actually useful for the people that need it, and it'll just be like filled to the brim with spam. So frankly, I don't know how to deal with like the oversaturation yet, but when we deal with it, we'll have to analyze how it's affecting the network and how it's affecting, like if we're being too heavy-handed with projects that are listing themselves just trying to get promotions or something like that, but that's definitely something that is very hard to predict.
What about reducing people with NFTs that don't really do as much as just a picture? What if they do something else? You ever thought about that?
In terms of those types of projects?
Yeah.
Because I think you really see that sort of spam. If you join any amount of crypto Discord communities, you instantly get those types of really spammy NFT messages. So as it stands right now, look, JPEG NFTs are very hot, and as a result, there's a lot of bad actors in it just trying to profit off of people who don't know what they're doing. But I think JPEG NFTs will evolve and we'll deal with those in the future.
The fifth is the moat. Okay. The fifth stage is the moat. Why should we care about the moat?
I would say moats essentially are how your product is used in our case. Where it's like someone can, because we're gonna make the project open source, so anyone can technically fork the code, but the real value creation in our case is the building of the network, getting the people we want to use it and building it for them. So that's the key piece. So I think previously with software products, just the software itself would be the moat. I think in crypto, the moat becomes your community and being aligned with the community.
Your competition?
Well,
Your community?
I would
That's what the moat is, you know.
What do you mean?
The moat is a competition, you know.
The moat is the distance between you and the competition.
And
I'm
that
saying the
becomes your-
community becomes the moat. If that makes sense. Because a lot of people think their moat comes from the proprietary software, which is how a lot of Web 2 stuff functions. Like the code base is closed. You only get access to it if you're a worker there or a developer. But open sourcing it allows people to really see the process and take notes from it and do all these crazy different things. So that's our moat, the community. Because that's where most of the value.
Sonny, you need to stop rambling.
I thought that was useful.
What when you have an answer, try to answer in the most simple way possible. Okay?
That was simple.
Okay.